right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, students, for logging in. My name is Stephanie Dennler with NICC. We have 4 great panelists today with us for Let's Get Fiscal, Careers in Finance and Accounting. If you don't mind, again, students, if you are sitting next to someone and their name is not in the participant box, if you could please place their name as well so I can make sure that you are accounted as attending, that would be great. We're going to start out because I know there's probably still a few students here that have not logged in yet due to classes just ending or starting. So I'm going to, we had polled our panelists today, a fun little question about how did you spend your money from your first job? That's kind of a fun question, especially for you financial folks. I know I probably spent mine all on toys and clothes and fun stuff as well. When you're young, you don't maybe think quite about saving as much. So you see here that Andy's first job was rock picking, and he spent his money to purchase a car and put a stereo system in it. An awesome Grand Prix. It's too bad they don't make any of those Pontiacs anymore. Emily spent her money on clothes and saving for a new car. Her first job in high school was a part-time convenience store clerk. Aaron said that he can remember spending his money from his job for a 6-disc CD changer. It was money well spent until dust crept in from all of the rust holes and scratched up his CDs. I love that. For those of you that are on watching, if you could put in the chat box what you have spent your first money on. I know there are some of us that are not high school students. You guys can put yours on as well. You can just sort of maybe see when we are young, like I said, we maybe not be saving or using it for cars, a very good thing, but maybe not the most practical of things. So if anyone wants to put that in the chat box, that would be great. Ooh, my first job was mowing yards, and I spent it on a Discman. That's great. Ooh, clothes and things I wanted. Yes, nowadays there's some pricey clothes out there, so I think parents let a lot of their kids make their money for those fun clothes. Ooh, what's this? My first, Julie's, her first job was babysitting, so she spent a lot of dollar bills on clothes. Yes, I think back then we were probably paid more in dollar bills than in the 5s, 10s, and 20s. Saving for an Apple Watch, a car, makeup, babysitting, and it brought a NSYNC CD. Oh, I love it, Holly O'Brien. Very fun. Babysat, save money. That is very good. We have a student here that is saving money. Well, great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys for the feedback on that. Like I said, that's just something a little fun. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica now, and Jessica is going to start us on a panel.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. That was a fun intro. Thanks, everyone, for sharing your first job and what you spent your money on. I will tell you, high school kids, if you don't know what some of those things were, Google it, and you'll be able to see some old pictures. Anyway, fun stuff. So let's get started. My name is Jessica Reis, and I am the NICC Cresco Center Director. I serve as a success coach along with Holly O'Brien for the school districts we are assigned, and then also work with students on NICC college classes, et cetera here. But today I'm going to talk to you about and lead our panelists through some interesting information in careers in finance and accounting. So let's start with introductions. And panelists, as we talked before, I'll call on you just so you don't step on each other. That's easiest. And Erin, you're first on my screen, so you're going to go first. So if you could start with an introduction, and what I'm going to, everybody will talk the same stuff. Share your name, the company you work for, what education that you have, and then your role at that specific company.
Sure. Aaron Hvitved, and work for Ameriprise Financial as a personal financial advisor. Got my education, UNI, grad degree in finance, and my role in the business is financial advisor and business owner. We have the luxury of being independent contractors through the business, so all advisors get to basically run their own practice as they see fit. So.
Awesome. So just to clarify a little bit, can you tell us what a financial planner does in layman's terms?
they wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take as far as personal finance. We like to, our elevator pitches is we help people build wealth and maintain it. So it's basically start to finish, talking about what a person's financial picture is, what they need to do to reach their goals, what sidelines could they hit along the way, and how do they protect themselves from that. So a lot of different avenues, but it's basically just encompassing a person's financial picture.
Great. So the student who is saving their money, maybe you want to talk to Aaron about how you can make that money grow a little bit more.
Yep.
Emily, you're next on my screen. Emily, will you tell us what you do, who you work for, the education that you have? I think I said role of the company.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Emily Dohlman-Govern, and I work for CUSB Bank as a compliance officer. I got my bachelor's degree in business administration.
Awesome. Andy, you're next up.
Okay, Andy Ludeking. I work for Cresco Bank and Trust here in Cresco, Iowa. I'm an ag and business lender, and I got my education, 2-year degree from NICC in business administration, and then I went on to UNI and got my degree there in finance.
Great. So I'm going to go back a step. Emily, I didn't ask you what a compliance officer does in layman's terms. So I'm going to back up a minute. Will you tell us a little bit about what that means, being a compliance officer at CUSB?
Sure. Well, I'll give you a little bit of an intro. This is actually, I started as a compliance officer at the beginning of this year, so this is a new role for me. But overall, the compliance officer helps manage the bank's policies and procedures as new rules and regulations come out. We take that information and review it and basically break it down for our staff in the bank to know how that affects both the products and the services that we offer. And also I work closely with employees within the bank to help them answer compliance questions. So the reasons why we have to do things, the reasons or the type of disclosures we give to consumers, things like that. So I work in that capacity. My customers are really are my coworkers. So I don't work with a lot of people outside of the bank. So that's a little bit different from some of my past experience at banking.
Sure. Thank you. All right, Andy, tell us what a commercial and business lending, ag, you got in there. But anyway, tell us what a loan officer really does in layman's terms, please.
Well, it's basically we meet with clients throughout the year, both prospects and current clients, and do financial planning, essentially, to figure out what they need to do in the next year to be profitable. And, it also involves, of course, lending money to them to provide capital for them to operate their business. So we typically are meeting with customers, on the ag side during the winter months, and then on the commercial side all year long.
So your financial planning looks at financial statements and various documents for a specific business, whether it's a farm business or could be a retail downtown kind of Main Street type business, or it could be, let's say, a major manufacturer, depending on where it's at. So you're looking at their business financial planning and profitability versus Aaron, who's really handling personal finance for individuals and families. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Julie, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us your name, company, the education you have, and the role of the company that you play. Would you unmute yourself? I don't know if I have that. I can't do it for you, I don't think. There you go.
There we go. Good morning. My name is Julie Pemble. I own JP Accounting and H&R Block in Cresco. Obviously I do accounting and bookkeeping for various clients, mostly for small business. And then I do tax preparation work all year long for individuals, companies, farm, whatever comes about. I have a 4-year degree in management and accounting, and I am the owner.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about your education. You just said you have a degree in accounting, but you didn't mention CPA. Do you want to talk about what the difference between what you do and a certified public accountant is?
Sure. I just chose not to go on to get my CPA. Basically, a CPA, like it says, is certified public accountant. It's an extra license, essentially. What I do the most is kind of an organizational thing. I do accounting for small business, and I just chose not to do the CPA side of things. I'm an organizer. That's kind of the way I look at it from an
Sure.
accounting perspective. Yeah.
Sure. Great. Great. So we're going to start with you, Julie, since you're unmuted. Can you tell us a little bit about what interested you in a career in accounting?
Not entirely sure whatever snags anybody into being interested in being an accountant, but I've always I look at it as you have to be a detail person and organized, things like that make sense. Everybody thinks it has to do with math. I love math, but that really isn't accounting. To me, accounting is more just wanting to know where everything goes and keep track of your finances. I was the kid that counted my money all the time, I guess. I don't know.
Sure, definitely. How has your interest in accounting evolved as you progressed in your career, or has it?
Yeah, it's I guess from what I'm doing and being in a smaller area, I am my accounting started out thinking I would work for some big company and work in one of their accounting departments or something like that. Now I do a little bit of everything, but very small business oriented, because that's what we have the most of around here, of course. And so I think it's a lot more customer service than I ever thought it would probably be.
Sure, definitely. One thing I always think about accounting is it's very black and white. There's rules that apply, and the way a certain thing fits, kind of no matter the industry, no matter the size of business, it's just a matter of the scale that you work on.
Yes, that's very true. Yep.
Great. Thank you. Andy, we'll go with you next. What interested you in a career in lending?
Well, primarily I was interested in banking, and I actually started my banking career as a teller and then moved up to personal banking and then mortgage lending. And then I ended up being an ag and business lender. But what really interested me in banking in general was just the numbers and problem solving that was involved. I always enjoyed math through school. So that's why I ended up being a banker.
Sure. So thinking about the time when you were a teller to working with folks and checking accounts, and now working with businesses that probably have a lot more zeros at the end of the checks than what year where you started, has your interest evolved? Is there things that you miss from when you were working with folks as a teller to now? What's different?
Well, there's definitely more in-depth conversations now. What I do miss probably from the early days was there was a lot more customer interaction on a daily basis. There's a lot more behind the scenes bookwork now. But it's exciting to see different businesses and different farms, because every one of them is different. So it's exciting to look at different operations in the job that I do now.
Sure. Thank you. Emily, what about you? What interested you in a career in compliance? And maybe you're going to get here, but if you don't, will you talk a little bit about what an auditor is?
Sure. So I'm much like Andy. So my idea, kind of when I went to college, I thought I want to be a loan officer, and I'm really not sure how I came up with that idea, but that's what I wanted to do. And so out of college, I kind of like Andy, just to get started, I had the degree, but I didn't have the experience. And so I was a telephone banker, and then actually a telephone lender. Then I moved into some loan processing, finally had the opportunity to be a loan officer on the consumer and residential side. So I wasn't ever in the commercial business that Andy is in now. And then when I was working as a loan officer in our Charles City office, the opportunity came open for me, or an opportunity came open at the bank for an internal auditor. That was a new position to the bank entirely. And I kind of aligned the things that I enjoyed about lending with internal audits. So I knew I'm a rule follower. I like to complete checklists. I like to make sure our documentation is organized and complete. And so that kind of spoke to me as kind of some of my strengths. And so I applied for that position and took that position in Cresco. And then just a few years ago, learned that as the former compliance officer was going to become the president of the bank at the end of 2020, that was another opportunity to step up. So, applying and taking the position as compliance officer was just kind of pulling together the things I enjoyed in banking. So I certainly enjoyed the lending relationship with customers. I do miss that face-to-face contact. There are times where, like Andy said, more behind the scene type work. So I do a lot of reading at my desk and things like that. So that's kind of what led me to compliance. I kind of aligned what I felt like were my personal strengths and what I enjoyed about my job. And I had a great opportunity to step up in the bank to do that. And now as far as internal audit that you mentioned, or an auditor on a role inside of a community bank like this is really just taking a look at what we've defined as policies and procedures. And we take a look at file documentation, we take testing, and we look to see, are we doing what we say we're doing? And are we following regulatory compliance? So are we making loans? Do we document what we need in the file? When we handle a consumer request or a dispute or something like that, are we handling exactly the way that we are expected to within the industry?
Sure. So an auditor would do that, kind of do the research and the documentation inside an organization, sort of on a one-on-one basis, where the compliance officer, if I understood you correctly, you really take regulations as they're passed for whatever reason, and then understand how the bank or an organization would apply those to your specific organization, right? Is that the difference?
That's exactly right. So just compliance helps get that information down and actually implement it within the bank. The internal auditor is saying, okay, you said this is what we're going to do. Now we're going to actually take a look back and see, is that actually what we're doing?
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Erin, your turn. What interested you in becoming a financial planner, and how have your interests evolved over the course of your career?
Sure. So yeah, I was actually raised with finance dad. My father owned the business, started in '86. So, since I was a kid, we oftentimes would have conversations centered around what he did. So there was a lot of mentoring going on in the early years. So it always just kind of seemed like an intriguing thing for me, having him talk about what it is he did and how he did it. And so it always interested me from a young age as far as what I wanted to do. So when I went to college, that was the focus. And out of college, came back and that was always kind of where the center of things were. I'd say it's changed a lot since when he started in the business to where we are now. Technology has obviously played a huge role in that, and how you do things. Early day finance, it was almost more of being a storyteller, to be able to convey to people, certain ideas and things. And now with technology, the information is all out there. So a lot of times it's just correcting what people think or perceive or what they may have read, to get them to clearly understand it. But it has definitely changed and will continue to, I'm sure. So.
Sure. When you become a financial planner, and my layman's terms understanding, there's different licenses for different
Correct.
things, but can you talk a little bit about certifications, I think is the right term, or credentials maybe,
Sure.
that financial planners need to have?
Yeah. So most financial planners are kind of a title, but a lot of what we do deals with different types of securities. So most notably, if you want to be a full registered broker dealer, which means you can trade stocks, bonds, mutual funds, also get in the world of annuities and insurance. For starters, you got to get your Series 7, which is your broker license. In order to sit for your Series 7, you got to be sponsored by a clearinghouse or a company. A lot of the businesses want you to have some sort of formal education in order to be able to do that. So you got to get hired first. Once you're hired and sponsored, then you got to take your testing for your broker dealer, and then you got to get your insurance licensing, and then you got to get your state licensing in order to be able to work in certain states. Good news is most states are all reciprocal. So once you're licensed in one state to be able to work, you can work in others except for New York. They've got their own set of rules that you got to have a separate license for them, but a lot of licensing and then continuing that on an annual basis. So
Great. Thank you. I think the reason I asked that question, financial planning, there's some specific things, and I know there isn't throughout the financial industry, but the students, what I want you to take away from that is each of these folks have shared where they started and an entry-level opportunity that they had either while they were going to college or post-college. And you can see that they have all grown in their careers based on what they've chosen to do, different opportunities internally. So it's not like you have to have all those certifications Erin just talked about from the beginning. You just need to definitely progress as you go through. And each of the financial careers are similar in that nature. Andy, there's a student question I want to make sure that we get in here, that we have time for. and it is what's the best major or degree to be a banker? So my question, the way I want to pose it to you is, if you're looking at resumes of recent college grads, what majors or degrees are you looking for? What gets to the top of your list?
Well, any business degree, honestly, is looked at, about the same. Many that we see have finance. Many also have an ag type finance, an ag business degree from Iowa State. If you're going into agriculture, quite honestly, a farming background is extremely important. Not necessarily even the 4-year degree. But you'll see ag finance or a finance or some kind of a business degree 4-year. I wouldn't say there's a specific one that our HR department looks at and says it has to be this. I think it's more important to the kind of values and character you have, and quite honestly, the background that you have and how you perform in the interview. A 4-year degree is pretty important as far as a lending job, though, at this point.
Sure, great. Emily, is the same true? And I think I want to ask you a little bit more on the personal banking and maybe mortgage lending or that sort of stuff, or what your knowledge of the industry is. Do you think it's a similar type of degree, or are you looking for something more specific?
I would agree with Andy. It is, I think all business finance degrees are generally looked at the same way. I'm not handily involved in hiring, but that's certainly the take that I have. And certainly, again, it's that experience that you have to bring to it. When you might see a job listing for a loan officer position or even a compliance officer position, it's going to ask for a bachelor's degree. It's going to list that, or it's going to say equivalent experience or training. And so that's something to keep in mind too, as we kind of stated today, and Jess, you've helped kind of reiterate that it's really getting an entry-level job sometimes can get you where you want to go. And it's really relying on how hard you want to work and putting yourself out there and taking some chances and really getting to know as much as you can in general about the bank. It helps make you just more attractive and appealing as well. And once you have that experience, you're able to move, within the same organization to other organizations. But I would say general business degrees are common. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Julie, another student question. This one is about accounting. This student question is specifically about what high school classes you would recommend. And so I don't know if you're going to have a good handle on maybe what's offered in high school, but I would think back to maybe some early accounting type classes that you would suggest, or things that would help students dip their toe in to understand if accounting is really something they are interested in.
Right. For me, we had a business accounting class when I was in high school. I can't even remember what the name of it was, but any kind of accounting 101 class is going to give you a lot of the very broad strokes of what it's all about. I find, everybody thinks it's math, and it's really not math in my perspective, because everybody learns how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, and who does that in their head anymore? Everything is on the computer or done for you in software. It's more a case of understanding how to organize thoughts and identify what the issue is so that you can help problem solve it. Detail orientation. So I don't really know what classes that leans towards, but any kind of overview accounting is helpful. They're very, especially high school now, because they can do something through NICC, they can get into more than what just a high school might offer. So even any 101 class is really going to give you an idea if this is what you like or not.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I was going to mention any student who's interested in accounting, NICC does offer an intro to accounting course that you would likely be able to take through PIC enrollment through your high school. So talk to your coach at your respective high school, your guidance counselor, and they could talk to you about that. If your high school doesn't offer an intro to accounting or a business accounting type class, there's definitely ways that you can learn about those same things. And you keep talking about organizing. I always think about accounting as putting puzzle pieces together and being able to find out where the jigsaw piece doesn't fit in that. And so I think that that's a good way to look at things for sure.
Right. Well, Andy and Emily both pointed out, and I think they're very right. I tend to think of myself as a problem solver, a rule follower, and I think that comes from doing taxes because of all the compliance and the issues of following. But being detail oriented and figuring out how to organize somebody else is probably as important as anything.
Great, great, thank you. All right, we're coming up on our time. We got about 5 minutes left, so we're gonna finish with one last question. And I'm gonna ask about what's the class, you guys can all think about it and then I'll call on you. What's one class that you had in college or high school that during the time you thought, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done. I can't believe this is gonna be relevant. And now you use that information daily. Because I think we've all had that experience. So Aaron, I started with you. I'm gonna put you on the spot first, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What class would you share with us?
I kind of split it because I couldn't choose between two. And
That's all right.
It goes between grammar, lit, and psychology. Just because so much of what we do references around digital correspondence. And in my eyes, nothing's more unprofessional than when you write an email and you don't structure it properly, or you got run-on sentences, and things like that. I think being able to correspond with peers and clients and to make it look professional is good. And I always find myself going back and double checking because I'm not sure, I'm questioning how I structured it. So, and like you say, I think back, why didn't I pay more attention when they were talking about that in school? But good news is there's a lot of resources to help. The second one is psychology. Just because when you deal with people's money, there's a lot of emotion involved, and they're not always going to tell you what they're concerned about. So you really got to be able to read people and know how to ask questions in a way that allows them to open up, and to maybe get a feel for how personality types handle money differently and how to approach it. So those two things were, at the time I didn't take seriously, but now I find myself using a lot. So.
That's great. Thank you. Really good points, Aaron. Emily, what about you? What's a class that you didn't think was relevant at the time, but now you use?
I think it could have been partial wishful thinking, but economics for me. I really struggled. It bored me, and I didn't know how any of this was going to be relevant in my future. And so I did what I had to do to get through that class. But boy, do I wish now that, there's certainly things that I took away from accounting, but have given the chance again, I would take it because now it's much more relatable when I'm in the field and I'm hearing, net interest margin and things like that. It makes more sense. I have a good base, but I certainly don't have the wealth of understanding that I could have had I taken that class more seriously.
Sure. Yep, definitely. Andy, what about you?
I would say the class that really sticks out at me that I disliked the most probably in college was speech. And I never thought I would use it. And I did not like standing in front of people and talking. But now I find myself, I have to present in loan committee, a couple times a week. And I've spoken at a few conferences, and it just gets easier as time went to do it. But at the time, I really disliked it, and I never thought I'd use it. But I use it all the time now. So.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one I don't think, regardless of the career, at some point, everybody's asked to talk in front of someone, whether it's internal at a meeting or, like you said, at a conference or whatnot. So definitely one to try to pick up some pointers when you have that class. Julie, what about you?
I'm a little bit like Aaron, twofold. First one, I completely agree with him on the language class or the writing, that kind of thing. I am the same way. I really want to put forth my thoughts in the best format I can. I also grew up with an English teacher father, so it kind of stuck in my head. And so maybe I didn't like it so well when I was younger because he was the teacher, but now I know how important it is. But my main one comes from my first college calculus class that I took. I thought I loved math. I took that class and realized I really don't like math, or I don't like this kind of math. But my teacher, the way he got to know everybody's name the first week was he called on you every day for all of his questions until he knew who you were. So it petrified everybody in the class. But the one thing he always said is, if I do nothing more in this class than teach you how to organize your thoughts and answer somebody well, then I've accomplished my goal, even if you know nothing more about calculus. And at the time I thought, oh my gosh, what am I taking this class for? But I refer to that all the time. And I have told that story 1,000 times as my career has progressed.
Great. I think that's a great way to end this. And a friend of mine who happened to do a job shadow for one of our students who's in Career Learning Link yesterday told me that a college degree was a certificate to learn about a specific discipline. And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is that all the things that we're learning, whatever class it is, whatever area, it all applies and comes down to a life skill that you apply in a specific industry or business. So I just want to thank panelists for joining us today and passing on your wisdom to all the students. This was great. Wish we had more time, but I think, Steph, it's your turn to close us out.
I think you did a great job. Again, thank you, panelists. Students, I will be sending out the link when it is up on our YouTube channel. So in case you want to rewatch this or share with one of your friends or your parents, if they want to watch it with you and ask questions. If you have any questions for any of these panelists, please feel free to email me. You all have my email from the reminder emails, and I can forward it on to them and they can answer that for you. So again, thank you everyone for your time today, and have a good Tuesday.